Okay, we are just after 9 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know you all have probably pretty busy days ahead of you. So, um, this is one of a workshop in a series of workshops that we're currently running, just to kind of give you an insight into proposal development, just the general grant writing process, all of those things. We send out emails whenever these are going to be happening, so stay tuned and hop on any opportunities that you would like. Um, okay, so I'm fairly new to UIS, so a lot of you may or may not have met me yet. But my name is Samantha Code, and I'm the new grants writer in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. I've got 9 years of grant writing experience in private, state, and federal grants, primarily federal, but I've done pretty much everything. And I also mentioned that I'm in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. So if you're interested in applying for any opportunities that you come across, set up a meeting with us. We have all kinds of resources available for you in help finding grants. We have budget templates, general university information that you may need, all kinds of things. So if you're considering submitting a proposal, reach out to us at the ORA email, and we'd be happy to help. Okay, so this workshop is going to be aimed at just developing or creating a solid proposal. So it's a lot of the background information for creating a proposal. We have another one in a couple weeks that's going to be focused on developing a solid narrative. So this is just going to be a general overview of creating a solid base for your proposal. So first things first, presumably, if you're reaching out to us or if you're interested in applying, you've already found your grant opportunity that you're looking for, that you want to submit an application for. And the first thing that you want to do is identify if the funding opportunity that you've identified is the right funding opportunity. You want to make sure that you're eligible to apply. If you're using Grant Forward or any other search engines for um, finding your solicitations, you can filter for those to make sure that you're eligible, but double check and make sure because they might have criteria listed in the request for proposals that didn't, send up a flag or something on their search criteria. Um, the second thing is the lead time on the proposal submission sufficient? If you come to us 3 days before a grant's due, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to put together a solid proposal. Even if you have a great idea that would fit that funding opportunity, and it would probably score pretty well, it's really hard to develop a solid proposal on a limited time frame. 2 weeks or more is preferable on our end, so that way you have time to, reach out for feedback and do all the things you need to do to make sure it's successful. And then you also want to make sure that your project is in line with the solicitation's priorities. Um, there's something to consider beyond simply being eligible. If the proposal weights community engagement heavily and you don't have any existing relationships with community groups, then you're going to have a hard time achieving those points on that rating scale. So it won't be competitive. So if you have a lot of work to do before you submit to even make it competitive, that's something to consider before spend your time putting together a proposal. Also, another thing to consider is the agency's funding priorities. If a funding agency is, a health-based organization, chances are that you're not going to be submitting a proposal to fund sabbatical research into fiction literature reviews. Or, of course, there could be outliers, but make sure that your idea is in line with the funding agency's priorities. And also, is the budget big enough for your idea? If you have a project that is extremely significant and you think that it's going to create lasting impact, you don't want to apply for a grant that's, $5,000. So make sure that the budget is big enough for your idea. And then also, is the timeline long enough to complete your objectives? So once again, to the same point, if you have a really large project, you don't want to limit yourself on time. So you don't want to apply for an extensive project that, the proposal only allows for 2-year time periods when 5 years would be better to flesh out your idea. And then after you've reviewed your eligibility criteria, you want to review the solicitation in detail. You want to make sure if there's a letter of intent required, that you have the dates written down for those and you allow ample time to submit those. Because if you forget to submit the letter of intent or neglect to receive an invitation to apply, then you are going to, you can put together a whole proposal, but if you miss that step, then it's not going to matter. Okay, and then you also want to review the required documents, the supporting documents, formatting requirements, evaluation criteria. All of those things are going to help you form an outline to put together your proposal. You also want to see, one of the most useful things in a solicitation is if they have evaluation criteria. Scoring rubrics are fantastic. It'll give you an idea of what the agency puts more weight on and what you want to focus more on in your proposal. Templates are also a really useful thing. If the agency or if the solicitation links to example proposal formats, or if they have their own budget forms that you want to use, or if they have table formats, things like that, using their templates or using their formats can be beneficial to you because that's what they're going to be looking for when they review the site or solicitation. Also, another thing to consider is if there are required certifications or necessary approval steps, those things do take time. So that leads back into the don't let us know 3 days before. So that way we can help you check and see if everybody on your team has access to the required systems, or if it has to be sent up the chain for approval, if you have to do an IRB review, things like that. Make sure that you take note of those in the solicitation so that way you're aware of it and you can get started on those ahead of time. In addition to the regular proposal, you want to review all of their supplemental information as well. For agencies that have established priorities or targeted plans or initiatives that this funding opportunity is catering to, for example, if they mention that they're soliciting proposals to further their sustainability initiatives and they link to a sustainability plan, similar things for diversity, equity, inclusion plans, or agency-wide initiatives, being aware of those and including, a sentence or two saying that this contributes to their priorities in this way in referencing their internal documentation can really help you, structure your proposal and then also help award your points. Another thing that some agencies do is that they have successful applications posted on their website, especially federal sources, since they're being funded by public money. Some of them will include abstracts, even if the full proposal isn't available. Abstracts and titles can give you insights into the types of projects that the funding agency prioritizes. So even if they don't have the full proposal on, you can see what they funded in the past and see if your proposal fits into that trend. Also, sometimes they'll list the budgets for successful proposals. So you can see trends in funding amounts that way. So if, a solicitation said that the maximum that you could receive is $500,000, but the majority of the proposals that were awarded were in the 250 to 300,000 range, that can kind of give you an idea of how they're going to prioritize spending their money. I'm also a very big proponent of lists. So if you are getting ready to set up your proposal, start writing your narrative, find or make a list. If the solicitation doesn't provide a list, make one for your required documents, the priorities listed in the application, key points or evaluation criteria. If they have a scoring rubric, it can help identify the areas that you should focus on. So if they say 20% or 20 points of a 100-point application is given to community engagement, then, and all the other categories are in 10, 5%, then you want to put more emphasis on those categories that are more valuable. High value content or high value sections should have more content than the low value sections. So that leads to, if you have 20% of that community engagement, you don't want to say 2 sentences. You want to expound upon it and you want to put more focus on it because that's what they're focused on. When it comes to structuring your actual proposal, starting to write your narrative, these are some common sections that can be included. You definitely want to have a cover page that has general information with the project title, the applying institution, the PIs, because whenever they're reviewing, that's the first thing that they'll look at. They want information, general information about the project before they get into the full proposal. And then you also want to include the abstract with the brief description, the introduction, providing background. You want to weight these categories based on the scoring rubrics or based on the weight that the proposal puts on them too. And then it's also really important to highlight work that you've done in the past that correlates to your experience with these things. And because they're more likely to fund experienced groups than new ones. So if you have past experience, highlighting the programmatic, institutional, or individual or team capabilities can help set your proposal above, just because it shows that you're already invested in this area and you've contributed to the bodies of work. Also, don't forget to include evaluation criteria. How you plan to assess your success or achievement of your projects and goals is how they're going to weight your success as well. So if you are saying that you're going to send out a survey and you expect to see 50 responses, the content of those responses could be evaluation criteria, or just the number that you receive back could as well. So just make sure that you have a plan to evaluate your also, you want to create an outline based on those criteria. If the solicitation includes guidelines on how things should be structured, follow those guidelines. Those basic proposal elements are useful, but every solicitation is unique, and you want to structure it to make it easy for the reviewers to score. So if they have the RFP in front of them and they're going down the line trying to check boxes off, you want to make sure that it's easy for them to see and easy for them to read. You also want to detail important elements, timeline and milestone tables. So when you expect certain activities to be done, or between even just a range of when you expect them to be done is important too, because that'll help them with their reporting periods and it'll give you something to go on to report on. Output and outcomes tables help a lot too, because it puts all of the expected outcomes in one place. So if you say you are going to perform a task and what the outcome is going to be, that's an easy way for reviewers to evaluate your proposal as well. Budget details are also important. You might have a budget table, but having a budget narrative that explains why costs are the way they are. A lot of times agencies or solicitations will have their own templates for that, but you want to make sure to detail how much money you're asking for and what that money is going to be used for in your proposal well. And also you want to pay attention to headings and bullet points that are emphasized in the RFP. If they have defined sections, that can help you structure your proposal, because if they have a section that says outputs and outcomes, then that's where you detail those sections. And if you're creating your outline, aligning it with headings or focal points that are made in the RFP can help you with that. And when you complete an outline, it kind of functions as a worksheet that you can use to create a rough draft of your proposal. When I'm structuring a grant proposal, I always do it that way, just so I make sure that I'm including all of the relevant information and I'm not missing anything. You can edit things, you can move them around if you need to, but having it all laid out in one place and treating it like a worksheet has been incredibly beneficial, just because you make sure you're not missing anything. Okay, and then to that point too, you want to understand who you're writing for. Some RFPs will tell you the makeup of your review panel, but there's no guarantee that your reviewers will be subject matter experts. They may be lay people, or they may have general knowledge of your field, but chances are that they're not going to have your specific knowledge. The reason why they're soliciting proposals in the first place is to fund proposals that they can't accomplish themselves. It's to increase the body of research and bring more minds into something. It's not to highlight something that they've already done. So your review board will more than likely not be subject matter experts, and you need to remember that you're writing a grant proposal, not an academic paper. And to that end too, no one wants to feel like an idiot. You want to avoid complex jargon, heavy language. You want to define terms and acronyms and make clear points, because they want to understand what you're asking for. They don't want to read a paragraph and be like, oh my gosh, what happened there? You want them to feel like they're understanding what you're asking. And then to that point too, when the abstract is or project is made public, you want people to understand what it's about as well. So it's not just about your review board or your agency, it's thinking further ahead and considering that, there might be a press release on your proposal, or they might want to highlight the work that they're funding, and having an easy, understandable section laid out that they can just pull and publish is beneficial as well. And then also, you want to focus on being persuasive rather than informative. You want to keep in the back of your mind that you are writing in a competitive fashion, and you want to make the point that your proposal should be funded over other people's. Why should your project be given priority? When they write their stakeholder reports to hype up their successes, how will they answer the why that proposal question? Why was this one chosen out of all the others? And you want to also be forward thinking and keep that in your mind as you go. You're not reviewing work that you've already done. You're trying to do something new. You're trying to move forward. And thinking or keeping that in your mind while you're writing your proposal is beneficial, because you're wanting to justify why this is being funded and how this will help move forward the body of knowledge going forward. And then, like I was saying, box checks, you want to go for the low hanging fruit. Based on evaluation criteria, you don't want to bury the important things. You want to look for buzzwords or phrases. If they say that, priority will be given to applications that prioritize low income and minority inclusion, including a sentence like, this proposal will prioritize low income minority populations by engaging local community groups to identify potential participants, can be an easy box check for reviewers. Reviewers are impatient, and if it's not right in front of their eyes, they may assume that it doesn't exist. I've experienced that in a couple of proposals that I put together where they said, oh, it was only supposed to be a 3-year timeline when the RFP clearly said 5 years. And being able to point to that and show that, you know, we're right, or you did include everything that you were supposed to, can help as well. You also want to focus on brevity over verbosity. Strong, concise statements can really help with those box checks. They want to see, it all laid out in front of them. And to that point, I'm not going to read this entire section out, but if you take a second to do so, it's going to make my point. Lucia used this in our grant writing sprint, and I liked it a lot because it's a really good example of how you can get lost in a sentence. And that entire paragraph is one sentence. So it's one of those things where it goes right over your head. You don't absorb any of the information. And that kind of sentence can kill your proposal in the cradle, especially if you put it in like the first paragraph. So you want to make sure that you're making your point and making it clearly. And this is an example of how that point was not made. You also want to consider overall impact. Grantors want to see lasting impact rather than limited. They want to see that programs that they fund will continue after the funding expires. And thinking about that, like what happens when the funding runs out, if the project just ends, or if it contributes to further research, or if it'll be used to bolster current initiatives to make sure that they last longer. Those are also examples of forward thinking rather than backwards or present thinking. You want to make sure that they're getting the most bang for their buck. Also, if your project is scalable, if it has implications past the end of the current project, if it receives more funding, if there's other things that you can do with that, if it's scalable, if it can be expanded upon into different areas, make sure that you state that, because then that could open the door for future funding from the same source, or it could be a good motivator for them to fund as well, because they'll be contributing to the overall forging ahead with that research. Also, whenever you're putting together your proposal, if you're putting it together with a team, dividing and conquering is a good way to approach things. Because if you're working with a team, you're working with them because they bring something to the table that you don't already have. If they're better at budgets or research designs than you are, or if they have the community engagement aspect or the research aspect behind them, then draw on that expertise to write those sections. Because if you're writing with the team and conducting the research with the team, then you're doing it because they bring something to the table that you don't have. It'll also take pressure off of you as the primary grant writer, because it's not a solo sport, and having someone to look over the budgets or to put together one for you or to contribute to the introduction or something like that can make it a lot easier. And then successful proposals can gain input from multiple sources. So even if someone on your team is not an expert in a subject, or if you're looking for demographic statistics or information that you don't have access to, but your larger institution could, you can reach out to different departments and request that information. For example, we were looking at a proposal that was going to highlight the participation of low-income or minority students, or recipients of Pell Grants, things like that, and having university information based on that was going to be beneficial, having those statistics. So you might not have access to that internally, we might on a larger scale. So reaching out for that information can help you as well. And then also to that end, multiple rounds of internal review before you even submit the proposal can help and can give you an idea of where your proposal is lacking or where it could need more work or what you're doing right. And it's important to reach out to colleagues and then also lay people because, like I said, your review board is not going to be subject matter experts. So having colleagues review for content and the technical aspects, coherency, and just general content can be a layperson job too. So having multiple people review from multiple areas can help put your proposal together and make sure that it's coherent on a larger scale. And then multiple rounds of review. This also lends into don't come to us with a proposal 3 days before it's due. Because if you have time, you can conduct these multiple rounds of review. You can make your edits and send it back. And so having more time is definitely beneficial on this front as well. And then also, if you submit your proposal and it's rejected, it's not the end. Rejected proposals are learning opportunities. If your agency has debriefings as an option after your proposal has been rejected and you've been notified of that, those can provide reviewer feedback and they can highlight areas of improvement. Every reviewer is different and they all have different priorities when they're reviewing. So these debriefings can show you what each individual's priorities were. And it can also show you that your project is solid. It just sometimes you might get a bad review or two. So being aware of the types of comments that reviewers make or what they notice that you can improve upon in further future applications can be very useful. And then also, if your proposal is rejected, following up to see what they did fund can help you with, future proposals as well. If you intend on applying for the same opportunity, if it's on a rolling basis, seeing what that money was actually put towards and what they were interested in funding can help you make adjustments to your own project in the future. Or it can, point out that that solicitation wasn't the right one. Like I said, some of the agencies will showcase the abstracts of proposals that receive funding, so that can give you a lot more information too. And then after you get that feedback, you can edit your proposal. If you want to apply for the same opportunity again, you can include the comments from the reviewers. You can make adjustments to your project to make it more marketable and make it more attractive to your funding agents. That is the end of my exposition. So I am happy to take questions if anybody has.